This week's Piltch Point with Avram Piltch is proudly powered by PureVPN. Keep your browsing history private with PureVPN. It obfuscates your usage so that Facebook and Google, as well as your internet service provider, all will not see exactly and be able to trace exactly what you're doing. Plus, if you're in areas that are not your normal home, for example, when we were at Collision and we wanted to watch Hulu from the United States, we couldn't, but with PureVPN now you can. And right now we've got a deal for our viewers, $2.88 a month for 2 years instead of the normal $11 a month for the service. And all of that can be found at pilchpoint.live/purevpn. All right, so it's that time of year, Avram. We've got kids going back to school, and I know you are always on top of that, right?
Yes. So I wanted to call attention to, we have a couple articles about back to school on Tom's Hardware, but talk about some other stuff too. We have a story on 6 back to school PC upgrades that you can do. So if you already have a computer, which, there's a lot of students, college students going back to school, and they already have a decent computer, but it could get a little, their tools could get a little better. So obviously the things that I recommend to those folks are, if you can, whether you have a desktop or laptop, add more RAM. It's really good to go. A lot of people have 4 gigabytes or 8 gigabytes. If you can get to 16 gigabytes, which is not crazy, because you can usually do that for around $60. That would definitely help you with multitasking, which we're all doing. If your computer still has a hard drive, get an SSD already. It's so inexpensive. I recommended one of my coworkers the other day to buy a 500 gigabyte SSD for $65. And that wasn't even a great deal. That was like a regular price at Best Buy for a Western Digital blue SSD. So, so they're so cheap. I guess the other obvious things are, if you can get a monitor or a larger, faster monitor, one particularly if you game and you can get one that's 144 hertz or higher, that certainly helps your gaming experience. Getting a better keyboard helps you work better. Obviously, my favorite keyboard right now is this one, the Hex Gears Impulse, which is around, I think, $80 on Amazon. Fantastic Kale white switches. But let's talk for a second about if you haven't bought a computer yet, what you should get. So if you're a parent and you're looking for what to buy your child, it obviously depends on their age and your budget. If you're buying it for a college student, well, obviously you probably want something thin and light that you can take to class. So if you could budget between, say, $800 and $1,200, you could consider getting the traditional winners in this Ultrabook category, like the Dell XPS 13, Lenovo ThinkPad X1 Carbon, if you want a 2-in-1, the HP Spectre X360, or the HP Envy 13T. Those are all, or the Asus ZenBook. There's ZenBook line. Those are all really good choices for really thin and light Windows notebooks. If you are buying for a kid that is in high school or junior high or middle school, you have to look at, what is it? Do you want to replicate the experience that they're having in school? So in school, a lot of schools, they use Chromebooks. However, if you want, and a lot of people buy their kid that because they're used to it from school, but Chromebooks are still very limited, particularly when it comes to things like physical computing. You want to plug in an Arduino board or Raspberry Pi or something and do, create a robot or something. You're much better off with a computer that has native software, like a Windows PC. And you don't have to spend a lot to get a Windows PC, particularly if it's never going to leave the house. So if your, kid is in high school and junior high and they're not allowed to, you don't want them to bring their own laptop to school, which I think most public schools don't have you bringing your own laptop to school unless they've told you to get it. Um, then it's perfectly acceptable to get something like the Acer Aspire E15 that for under $350 gives you a very is bulky, not not fun to carry around 15-inch laptop, but it's very affordable and will get the job done for a lot of people. So, uh, obviously, you also might want to look into desktop. But a lot of college students, if they're getting a desktop, it is to play games in their dorm, and then they have another laptop that they carry around because college campuses these days, people bring laptops with them to school. And I have to admit, I'm old enough so old that when I was in college, a lot of my classmates didn't even own their own computers, let alone a laptop, and they had to go to the computer lab to do their work.
Yeah. Even for me, I know a lot of people in college did work in the computer lab because not everybody brought a computer to college, and that was, that was in the 2000s.
Yeah, so, when I was in school, people did have PCs. I must admit that at the beginning of it, people did not really have the internet. Um, and at the end of it, people just had dial up. But, but, it was, I mean, a lot of people just didn't even have a PC. So it's great to see how the world has advanced now where everybody's got a laptop. They don't even have big hulking desktops in their dorm. They have a laptop they carry around. And I guess schools have had to really adapt to that. And I've talked to some college students that I know, and it's like, yeah, everybody brings their laptop to class and they're typing on it. And I think about, man, if I had attempted to do that when I was in school, they would have been mad at me. Like, what are you doing bringing a computer? So it's a different world.
Indeed, I remember
As some of the parents can attest.
I had a math class. It was Calc 2, which if anybody has gone through calculuses, you know that Calc 2 is the one you probably need to be most engaged with because it's the weirdest of them. And so it's the one that moves computer engineers to computer science. Anyway, so it was in a computer lab, which I never did quite understand. And it was such an unusual situation, even then, to have computers in a math class that it was a massive distraction, and I ended up having to drop the class.
Right. I don't know. I feel like it would be a distraction for me, but I guess it depends. People get used to using it to take notes and other things.
Yeah, it really comes down to what you're used to interacting with. I was not used to that. It was very unusual, and so I mean, despite having at home like a crazy computer setup, I still got distracted by having a computer in that class. It could be the fact that the teacher was very monotone, made Ben Stein seem like bubbly and enthusiastic.
I think my mother still teaches college, and she's very old school, and I think if she sees somebody looking at a computer in her class, she's probably thinking like they're zoning out and they're going on Facebook or playing a game or something. And I guess as a teacher, really all you have to say is like, well, that's if you're in college, well, that's their fault, their problem. I'm going to give them the tests and exams and whatever, and they better pass.
Absolutely.
So,
For sure.
but anyway, if you want to see more of our advice about back to school PCs, come to Tom's Hardware. We'll be refreshing the upgrades page, so we'll have it on our homepage. But ultimately, I think it comes down to a lot of people are going back to school really soon or right now. So this is probably the time that is a good time to add a little something to your game, to like not expensive, like a better keyboard, a better mouse, a better monitor. Just those little things around the edges can really make the school year make you more productive, and might make those late night all nighters a little bit easier.
Yeah, for sure. Especially if you're working with a laptop and you're trying to live with the laptop hardware. The little upgrades like having a full feature keyboard, having an external mouse, having an external monitor to expand the experience to make it less laptopy, which can feel very confining. And laptop keyboards are, as Avram knows better than probably anybody else in the world.
Even the best ones are not as good as having an external keyboard, and that's just the facts. It's also just not as ergonomically. It's not as good for you. Like, I don't know. Everything I've read says that the ergonomics of a desktop, having your keyboard separated from the screen a little bit, is supposed to be better for you.
Mm-hmm.
I've read that in a few places, and so, not when you're on a laptop, you're hunched over it a little bit. It's definitely not as good for you to use for long term use. So, when I come home and I need to use my laptop, if I can get into my office where I have these things, I connect it to my dock.
Yep.
But
yeah, exactly. So it's always good to remind people that there are little things that you can do to make your everyday computing experience better, whether you're in school or not. All of those upgrade recommendations could be just as good for you and I as for a student. So it's always nice to hear those things, Avram. And we will have something new next time.
Yep.